Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fariza Roina binti Abdul Samad. I will be presenting about Malaysian Federalism for course ADS 404, Introduction to Public Administration. The objective of this project is to explain about Malaysian Federalism, the government at federal level, state level, and also the local government level.
As we know, Malaysia practices parliament democracy with constitutional monarch. Yang di-Pertuan Agong or King of Malaysia is the constitutional monarch and head of state of Malaysia. His Majesty is elected by the Conference of Rules for the term of 5 years. His Majesty King has the power to appoint Prime Minister to head the executive body, which is the body who governs Malaysia according to the law made by the parliament. His Majesty also has the power to dissolve the parliament based on the advice from Prime Minister. Besides that, His Majesty is the head of Islam and also the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces in Malaysia. His Majesty also holds the power to grant pardon for offences that have been tried in court of martial and all offences made in the 3 federal territories. His Majesty King is above everyone else in Malaysia and has the immunity where he can only be tried in a special court. His Majesty assisted by a commission, cabinet, cabinet ministers, and national councils. Different commissions have their own responsibilities. For example, the election commission is set up to ensure a fair and equitable operations of elections in Malaysia. The cabinet consists all of the ministers, while the cabinet committee is formed to tackle a specific issues. The formation of cabinet committee is decided during the cabinet meetings. Um, for example, there is a special cabinet committee on corruption and special cabinet committee for salaries of public sectors. I will explain this later about cabinet on later part. Next is national councils. Like cabinet committee, national council is also formed to foresee a certain specific issue. For example, the Malaysian National Security Council, which is responsible in managing and coordinating the implementation of policies related to security. The executive. Malaysia's government is adopting the principle of separation of powers and divided it into 3 categories, namely the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. The state government in Malaysia also have their own executive and legislative bodies, while Yang di-Pertuan Agong or the King of Malaysia is the head of state. The executive body is headed by the Prime Minister, who governs the country according to the laws made by the Parliament. Prime Minister is appointed by the King of Malaysia, and the Cabinet Minister must also be appointed by the King of Malaysia. And all of them, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Minister, must be a member of the lower house. I will explain about lower house later. So the Prime Minister will advise His Majesty King on the appointment of cabinet ministers. Like I mentioned earlier, the Prime Minister and all the cabinet ministers must be a member of the lower house, but a few are appointed from the upper house. Each cabinet have their own responsibility, but all the cabinet ministers and the prime ministers are collectively responsible to a decision made by the Malaysian government in the parliament. Functions of the executive body is to, among others, to formulate policies, including on national economics and development programs, managing matters regarding nation's financial, including setting the budget and determine the tax rate and also decide whether to take a loan for the country. And another thing is they propose and debate laws, critics, and suggest any issues concerning the people and the nation. Next branch is the legislative. The Parliament of Malaysia is the highest legislative body in Malaysia. Its function are to enact, amend, and repeal the law. The Parliament introduces, regulates, and amend law, debate any issues excluding sensitive issues, controls the executive, and they were given power by the Federal Constitution to legislate and preserve law. The Parliament is also responsible in setting the budget and tax rate. It consists of the Senate or Dewan Negara, also known as the Upper House, and the House of Representative, Dewan Rakyat, or the Lower House. His Majesty King, as the head of state, is the third component of the Parliament. Members of the Senate or the Upper House are appointed by His Majesty King or by the State Assembly, while the House of Representatives or the Lower House consists of 222 members, which were elected by the people during elections. Members of the Senate or the Upper House are appointed by His Majesty King or by the State Assembly for the term of 3 years or maximum 2 terms. The highest council consists of 70 members. The main function of the upper house are to debate various proposals of laws, policies, and bills forwarded by the by the House of Representatives. While the House of Representatives or the lower house consists of 222 members, which are elected by the people during election process. Speaker is head of the lower house, assisted by two deputy speakers. These 222 members who are elected for the lower house are responsible to debate on any issue of national interest. They formulate policies and programs for public development and benefit, and they also the one who approve the law and policies. A two-third majority of the lower house members are required to approve law and policies which concern the Conference of Rulers and also the Bumiputra special position and privileges. Other than the two issues, only a simple majority of members are required to approve the law or policy. So if you can recall earlier, I was explaining about this same exact role earlier, which was held by the executive branch. These are the same people who were elected by the people to be the member of the lower house and the same people who were appointed by His Majesty King to be the cabinet ministers. Next one is the judiciary. The judiciary possess the judicial power and carry out judicial function. The judiciary has no power to regulate law or carry out executive power. It is an institution where judges can carry out their tasks fairly, justly, and without bias. The head of the judiciary body is the Chief of Justice. He is appointed by His Majesty King with the advice from Prime Minister. Besides the Chief of Justice, the appointment of the President of Court of Appeal, Chief Judge of Malaya, Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak, and other federal court judges are with the consent of His Majesty King with consultation with the Chief of Justice. Federal Court is the highest court in Malaysia. Established in 1957, it is housed in the Palace of Justice in Putrajaya. Jurisdiction of the Federal Court as an advisor to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on Malaysia's constitution. They decide on dispute that arises between the state and federal government. Appeal Court is the second highest court in Malaysia. It was first created in 1994 to perform function of an appellate court. Next is the two high courts, one for Peninsular Malaysia and another one is for Sabah and Sarawak. So the High Court of Malaya is headed by Chief Judge of Malaya, while Sabah and Sarawak is headed by Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak. Next is the two high courts. One for Peninsular Malaysia, which was headed by Chief Judge of Malaya, and one for Sabah and Sarawak, headed by Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak. The High Courts have an unlimited jurisdiction in all criminal matters, excluding matters involving Islamic laws. And they also have a civil jurisdiction and hear claims exceeding 1 million ringgit, and also jurisdiction in criminal cases punishable by death. Next is the session courts and magistrate courts. The session and magistrate courts have the power in both criminal and civil matters. The session courts has a jurisdiction in criminal and civil offences other than offences punishable by death and amount dispute of less than 250,000 ringgit. For example, dispute between landlords and tenants and motor vehicle accidents. They may pass a sentence including natural life sentence. The magistrate court is further divided into two. First class magistrate, which has a jurisdiction on criminal offences punishable with imprisonment of not exceeding 10 years or fine. Past sentence of imprisonment not more than 5 years. Fine up to 10,000 ringgit and maximum strokes of 12. The first class magistrate court hear all civil dispute of less than 100,000 ringgit, while the second class magistrate has jurisdiction on offences punishable by fine or imprisonment not exceeding 12 months, past sentence of imprisonment not exceeding 6 months, fine not exceeding of 1,000 ringgit, and civil cases not exceeding 10,000 ringgit.
These three branches are at the federal level of Malaysian government. They answer directly either to His Majesty King or the Prime Minister. All matters related to national defence, finance, foreign affairs, home affairs, citizenship, education, public works, and trade, commerce and enterprise are all under the jurisdiction of federal government. The federal government shares the jurisdiction with state governments on matters related to public welfare, scholarship, town and rural planning, sewage, drainage and waterways, cultural activities, housing and housing allocation, and public health. While the state governments has the jurisdiction on matters related to the Sharia law for Muslims, land, agriculture and forestry, state administrative, state public holidays, heritage site, and local governments.
The state government. All 13 states in Malaysia has their own legislative assembly. The government structure are similar to the federal government of Malaysia, with exception of judiciary powers for Sabah and Sarawak, which they have a minor native judiciary powers. Another differences is the state government legislature consists only a single chamber. The head of state for Johor, Pahang, Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, Perak, Kedah, Perlis, Kelantan, and Terengganu are their respective monarch. the Sultan or the King. And yang di-Pertuan Besar for Negeri Sembilan. While the heads for Penang, Melaka, Negeri, Penang, Melaka, Sabah, and Sarawak are headed by Yang di-Pertua Negeri and sometimes referred as governor. State Legislative Assembly members are elected by the people during election. The State Legislative Assembly consists of Speaker and ruling party and also the opposition party. Headed by Menteri Besar or Chief Minister for Sabah, Sarawak, Penang and Melaka. State Executive Council, or EXCO in short, are members of the State Legislative Assembly which was appointed by the Menteri Besar. These are the people who will govern the state government. They answer any questions regarding matters related to government. Meanwhile, for Sabah and Sarawak, they have the State Cabinet, which is led by the Chief Minister. This is the executive branch of state government. They collectively responsible to support and defend state government's decisions. Next is local government administrative. Local government is a field administration. It is the extension of the state government administration at field level at a specific area or territory. This is the lowest tier of government in Malaysia. They ensure efficient administrative in that specific area. Local government can be divided into three categories: city council, municipal council, and district council. The first category, the city council. The criteria for granting a city council is it has a minimum population of 500,000 and annual income of not less than 100 million ringgit. Example of city council is Majlis Bandaraya Melaka Bersejarah and Shah Alam City Council and Kota Kinabalu City Council. Second category is the municipal council. Area of municipal council is minimum population of 150,000 and annual income of not less than 20 million ringgit. The third category is the district council. Criteria for district council, population is not exceeding 150,000 and annual income of less than 20 million ringgit.
Local government are authorized to collect taxes in the form of assessment tax as their main source of revenue. Their main functions are planning, control and promote the development of their area. And beside that, they also supervise city services and public health for residents, including cleaning and waste disposal, design and implement urban beautification, prepare and maintain sports complex, provide and maintain public facilities such as roads, street lights, drainage and market stalls, and recreation parks and other facility. They also plan, promote and encourage commercial, industrial and tourism development in their area. As a conclusion, Malaysia is adopting the concept of power separation, which can prevent concentration of power by providing checks and balances. Each branches have their own jurisdiction, power and responsibilities. And with that, thank you so much for your time and thank you for listening.